I'm not going to sugar the pill. Space Marines are tricky to paint, especially if you don't have much time in the evenings. You're a parent, you're at school, college, uni, full-time employment. We've all been there. Don't worry, I've got 20+ years experience on painting toy soldiers, and I'm going to help you get those models on the tabletop as quickly as possible. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. Cheers. Beautiful. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. Part 1 covered the essentials of painting Space Marines. In fact, it's the essentials of just painting. So if you're new to the hobby, check that video out. It's got loads of hints and tips on getting stuff painted fast and also just understanding different methods. This particular video, we're going to concentrate on the first half of the first founding. So we've got 4 colour schemes to cover and some basing as well. Now, disclaimer, the paint jobs in this video are not going to win you painting awards. However, they are going to get your models on the tabletop quicker and they'll still look really good. So that's the important thing to take away from this. And although each model probably took me somewhere between 20 to 40 minutes, when you're batching them, your time's going to get cut down even more. So you'll probably find what would be a 40-minute paint job on its own might be half an hour to 20 minutes when you're doing like 5 or 10. So bear that in mind. So the first one we're going to concentrate on is the broodiest of all Space Marines, the dark, emo kind of ones that just all feel a bit sad. It's the Dark Angels. And apparently they're Chaos as well. They're not. I just like saying that. First thing we need to do before we begin painting the model is to undercoat it. Here I'm going to be using a dark green, and this is from Colourforge. It's called Renegade Green. Then after that, once it's all dry, I'm just going to start doing some dry brushing. Now the point of dry brushing is to remove as much of that pigment from the bristles as possible. Just using some tissue paper here, because we all have tissue paper at home. Then it's just a matter of flicking that over the model, because all you're trying to do here is pick out those raised edges to give yourself some definition and highlight. Again, just take your time, work your way around, and in some places you might want to do a second coat or a third coat to help build up a nice bit of definition. So next up is to dry brush over with some frog green or a light green. Again, same thing, a little bit lighter, just picking out those edges. If you do go a bit heavy like I did on his neck piece there, you can always tidy that back up after. So just work your way around, softly picking out the edges to give you some nice, crisp definition. Next up, we're going to pick out all the black details. This is weapons, anything that's going to be metallic because it's in the cracks and it's just a lot easier to paint, and also the undersuit, and as well as leather. So if they've got boots and stuff, you want to pick those out as well. So just work your way around, picking out all those details. And in some places, you might want to do a second coat. Don't worry, if you get any paint on your model, you can always wipe off with your finger, or you can just tidy back up after. Like I've got some on the shoulder pad here. I'll just use a bit of water, get a brush, wipe it off, dead easy. Now I'm going to base coat any red details. So for a Dark Angel, this is going to be the weaponry. So just work my way around. Probably need to do a couple of coats here as well to get a nice opaque tone. So just take your time. Again, don't worry if you get in the recesses. A shade will sort that later on. Just keep working your way around and then apply a second coat. So just add a bit more punch and hopefully not be as wishy-washy. Now we're going to move on to applying some silver. So I'm just using oily steel here, just working my way around. Again, in some places I don't have to be mad because there's already black in the recesses, so the shade can kind of sort that out and apply a shade all over. So don't worry about that too much. You don't have to be super neat at this point, just get it on the flat areas. Then for any bone details, which is going to be the eagle on the chest, or what you want to call it on the chest, the aquila. It's got a skull on it, it's probably not an aquila. Doesn't matter. It's got a name, can't remember it. Now I'm going to get some black knight, any shade would do, and apply this all over. It can be quite messy, but you know, I'm happy with this because it flows, it's liquid, it goes in all the cracks. You just keep moving it around, take your time, just be mindful of it pooling in places you don't want it to pool. If you see some bubbliness, don't worry, just move your brush around it, it will get rid of it, and most of the time it dries like shade and water, so the bubbliness shouldn't be too disconcerting. Now we're going to move on to some jagged highlights, as I like to call it. You don't have to do this at this point. I like to do this now because, well, it's just to add a bit of detail. So if you want to add some more punch or a little bit more niceness to your characters or whatever, that's the step you want to do that. Otherwise, just leave them as they are. I like doing this. Makes the armour look battered and roughed up. Now in some places I might need to do a bit of a tidy up on that red because the wash has made it a little bit dark. You might find this on other colours, so all I'm going to do is just get some of that red, just work my way around. I'm picking the edges here just because they seemed a bit dark in places, but I'm also just going to move it around in the middle because that was a bit wishy-washy too. So just work your way around. You don't have to do this step if you don't want to. I'm just going to pick out the edges of that eagle on the front, one way with a brush, or like here with a dry brush, whichever you prefer the look of. Dry brush is quicker, tip of the brush a bit longer but looks nicer. Then we're going to pick out any eye lenses. For this we'll be using AK white, and then I'm just going to drop in some bar red that's really thinned down. Again, any kind of shade or contrast that you've got will do the job, just to give it a sense of like glow. Then for the weapons, just to finish them off, just going to dry brush with a little bit of burnt orange. Again, just an orangey red, just to help that red pop out. And there we are, our Dark Angel is ready for the tabletop, ready to slay some baddies. We've got the Dark Angels done, pretty dark, pretty angely. So we're now going to move on to probably the coolest ones, the white scars, because the bikers, I like bikes. So let's go on to the white scars, yeah. From that white undercoat, what we're now going to do is just apply some Soul Blight Grey. This is a really good shade for doing white armour, really quick, really easy. It might look quite dark at the moment, but once it dries, it just adds nice definition to the white. There was a bit of residue on there, added a bit of water, moved it around, fixed the problem really easily. Again, you just work your way around, getting those recesses, keep an eye out, make sure there's like no spots that you've missed or whatever. And then in some places, just get a little bit more water on your brush and then just neaten up on some of those flat areas if you're not happy with the finish. Or get a brush that's a bit more dry and soak up any excess. Next up is to do a bit of a dry brush. I'm just using white. It's not always necessary, but I just think it adds a little bit more crispness to those edges. So just work your way around, picking out those edges. And again, in some places, this will just make it a little bit lighter and add a bit more definition. Now we're going to move on to doing some chipping. All I'm going to do here is get some sponge, figure case sponge will do, get a brush sleeve and then just twist it in and you got yourself a nice little tool for doing some chipping. Just get a dark grey, I'm using AK Ash Grey here. And again, just get some on that sponge. Treat this like a dry brush, so you're going to dab it off onto some tissue. Once you're happy with that, just check a few times just on the side, then just go around on the edges and start stabbing it. As you'll see, you'll get some that are quite subtle, others that are a bit darker. Just work your way around. If you're not happy, you can always go back over some white, but honestly, it's just a really quick way of making that nice crisp white armour look a bit more battered, a bit like enamel when enamel's been chipped. And if there's something that's a bit too dark or a bit too much, you can always just turn that into a bit more chipping or whatever will tidy up. Here, I'm just using it with a brush, in case you don't want to do it that way. Some places you can't easily get to, so using a brush actually does help, and just do the odd dot. And there was a bit of pooling from wash. It's going to turn that into a bit of extra chipping. I'm going to get some bar red straight from the pot and apply this to the chest eagle. You can thin it down if you want to. It will go a bit pinky, but it's fine. You can always do a second coat if you need to. Now don't worry, I've splodged it. That is normal. I mean, especially from a speed point of view, you're going to make mistakes. Do not worry about it because we can tidy that up near the end. That is the most important thing to remember, is you can always tidy up. Now here, you don't have to do this at this point, but it's just a bit of fun. I'm just going to do a little company marking, and I'm just doing the easy one, which is like one little lightning bolt. Again, if you make mistakes, you can always tidy back up with white. Not want to do a second coat if you need to. Then it's going around and picking out all those black areas, pretty much like we did with the Dark Angel, just working way around. If you do find that you get some on the white, again, you can always get a brush, dry some of that excess off, but you can always tidy back up with white later. So to pick out the leather, the undersuit, the weapons, just take your time, and again, don't stress if you get it on other stuff. It's not the end of the world. You can paint over it. Honestly, I am a messy painter. At this point, I will make mistakes. You could do this before you do the wash if you really wanted to. That might even be a better option. Like, get all the black bits in before you start doing the wash and the chip in. It's up to you, because you can correct it a lot earlier on as well. Just take your time. That is the key thing. And don't worry if it looks ugly. It will change. So next up is to pick out any silver bits, again using oily steel here. Just work your way around. Like the teeth on a chain blade are dead easy. You just drag your brush down and just pick out those teeth. And because we've got black on there, you don't have to go mad trying to get in all the recesses because it's shadowy and dark in there anyway. And just Find anything that looks silver, pick it out. Some places, maybe a second coat, most of the time, not necessary. It's at this point I decided I wanted to do the tidy up because I'm going to do some little bit of washing on that chest eagle and the weapons. So it makes sense now for me to do that tidy up stage. Again, just working around, might have to do a second coat because of the red. If you've got any bits by accident from the black, just work your way around there. You can also chip as well. Then it's just a matter of getting some of that soul black grey and then just adding a bit of depth to that red. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You could use brown wash, black wash, it's entirely up to you. I just wanted to use soul black. Then for all those metallic details in the black, I just got some of that Black Legion, thinned it down. Works really well as a wash, but you could use any other shade if you want to. Then for the lenses, I'm just going to get some frost tar and just run that into the eyes and also the bit on the wrist where he's got that little control panel. Now, if you do need to tidy up, just do that with some white. It's a model that's really blown up large on the screen, so it looks worse than it actually is in reality, so don't sweat it. And there we are, the white scar is now ready for the tabletop. So we'll move on to the next one. White scars are done. Now we're going to move on to the next Legion, which is the Space Wolves. I've got a number, can't remember the number, written over there. Should probably, I'll go and find out. It's probably better. There we are, so yep. White scars were the 5th Legion, so the Space Wolves are the next in line, which are the 6th Legion. The Vikings, the beer drinkers, the tale tellers, as in sagas. They don't obviously tell on their mates. Maybe they do, don't know. Now, seeing as I didn't have an appropriate Space Wolf undercoat, and I do what most of us can do if we don't have the right colour, is to spray it a colour. I've gone for a nice mid-grey here, and I'm just using blue-grey, which is like rust grey. I'm just doing a really watered-down coat. It looks a bit messy at first, but that's fine, because then I'll do a second thin coat. That's the thing to remember, is when they're thin coats, they may look a bit funny at first, but once they dry, it's a nice, smooth, flat coverage. Just take your time, work your way around, make sure you're getting the nooks and crannies as well. Then I'm going to get Dirty Brown, great name. I'm going to apply that all over the Space Wolf. It looks mad at first, but I like my Space Wolves being a bit more grimy. You can see there's a lot of bubbliness there, that's fine. That is just quite normal. So all I'm going to do is just move that around. As you move it around, it turns more into liquid anyway. And then just getting those nooks and crannies, just work your way around and it'll be fine. You want them to, a bit of brown and grey, adds a bit of warmth, makes them like Space Wolves. Then we're going to get that blue-grey again, so that's the base colour, and I'm just going to overbrush here. So dry brushing, just a bit heavy, and what that's going to do is pick out those raised areas and just make them feel a little bit neater. It's kind of a tidy up stage really, but with a dry brush. Then we get some Spectrum Blue, which is pretty much the Fenris Grey equivalent, and I'm just dry brushing that over the edges. I like dry brushing Space Marines because it makes them look a bit rough. And then for chipping, we're going to use some Leather Brown. Again, work your way around, stab that on, and if you want to, use a brush to do it. It's entirely up to you. Do both, do one, do the other, doesn't really matter. It all works. Then as always, get all those black bits painted black. I prefer using Black Legion. It's just really good, really thin, gives in all the nooks and crannies, saves you a lot of time. Ink Paint Mega. And then for the traditional yellow of the Space Wolves, I'm going to get some Sahara yellow, pretty much like Avalon Sunset, whichever you prefer, whatever yellow. A couple of coats needed though. Take your time. And any silver details, again, oily steel, just picking them out. Honestly, it always looks worse when it's like really blown up like here, but once you've got a shade on it, it looks fine. Most satisfying part is just dragging that brush down the teeth of a chainsaw. Then for any gold details, I'm using brass here. I know it's called brass, but it looks gold. It's crazy, right? But it's just the right colour, just the right colour. That's for the chest eagle and whatever that is on his wrist. It's like a weird dagger skull. Now markings. Now here I'm using Bile Red because it's a bit thin. It's got a nice opacity to it as well. So you could just do one little dag if you want your pack marking to be one, nice and easy. But I went for 3 little triangles. So just work your way around. You can always pencil it in first if you're not very confident. And do this before you wash the shoulder pad as well, because then you can easily correct with yellow or red if you make mistakes. So here's a second coat. Again, just take your time. I'm mostly concentrating that in the middle. And then if I need to sharpen those edges a bit, I will just use a little bit of Sahara yellow and then chip in. Chipping in is great because if your line's a bit wibbly wobbly, you can camouflage it and hide those mistakes. And then I'm just going to wash the gold details. I'm going to wash the weaponry. I'm also going to apply this to the shoulder pads as well. So anything that's silver, yellow or gold is all going to wash. Now you think, yeah, Space Marines, they look after weapons, but it just ties in nicely with these guys if it's a bit of a brownie wash. And if you know, like I'm doing here, the old thumbing technique. And it's just highlighting the weapons with a little bit of ash grey. White for the eyes, then some bar red again, pretty much like we did for the Dark Angel. Just drop it in. Don't like it if it like dribbles a bit too much red, you can always get some grey or some brown, tidy up. And there we are, our Space Wolf is ready to howl at the moon, because that's what they do. Right, moving on from the Space Wolves, we're now going to go on to the Siege Experts. People say yellow's hard. Yeah, it can be. You can make it hard, or you can make it really easy. I'm going to make it really easy. I'm going to show you how. And this is one of the reasons why I find painting yellow easy. I spray it yellow. So just get yourself a nice rattle can. This is Sunset Yellow from Colourforge. You can use many others. I am going to completely coat this in a dirty brown shade. You see, again, seeing the bubbles, it's fine because it does turn into liquid. Add a bit of water if you need to, just to thin down on those panels. That's a really good way, actually, of just adding that nice smoothness to the finish as well. Now we're going to move on to some dry brushing. This is, again, like a tied up stage. I'm using Sahara Yellow, and I'm just using a bit of wood here to show the option of using wood. Just dry brushing that over, and then all I'm going to do is just heavily overbrush that. Again, you can see the yellow popping out. That brown's going to stay in the recesses. It's kind of just a tidy up stage, but I'm using a big old brush to do it. I went a bit mad here, as you can see, but that's fine because it does what I need it to do. You can just put less shade on if you want to do. I was just being lazy and applying it all over. Next up is to use a bone tone. I'm using pale sand for this. I like a bone on yellow because, I don't know, it just adds a bit more punch to it. Yellow sometimes looks a bit fake, so using a bone tone looks a lot better in my opinion. As always, as this video has already shown, black for all those black bits, ribbon bits, metal bits, whatever. Just get it in there. And again, if you make mistakes, it's going to happen. Look at that, made a little bit of a mistake there. And then of course, over the gun casing, I'm going to do a second coat so it just looks a bit blacker. And then it's tidy up central. Again, a couple of coats just to get rid of any black that might still be shown through. If you're not happy with something, just tidy it back up. It's dead easy. And then for his chest eagle, just going to use a little bit of that bar red again because we've already got it. I'm just using it straight from the pot. That bone tone will actually pop through a little bit and give you some nice instant highlights as well. And then again, picking out the silvers. Don't have to be mad, just the bits that look like they need picking out. Then for all the washing, I'm going to get myself some Black Knight or a black shade. Apply that over all the weapons, silvers. I'll even add it to the chest eagle as well. Just work your way around. It's fine. Shade is great. There we are. Chest eagle, getting it on. Now to knock the bone highlights back a little bit, just going to use a little yellow glaze here. So I'm going to get some Imperial Fists, thin it down with a bit of water, and then I'm just going to paint over all those panels. So that's everything. Treat it more like a layer as opposed to a shade, although that was a bit heavy there, I must admit. Take your time, and that will just knock back those bone highlights. Then all I'm going to do after that is get ready to do some chipping. So get the old sponge in there, and then just start applying it to the edges of the armour. Using leather brown here, it's a nice dark brown. You can use a dark brown if you want to, whatever works for you. Just go on those edges, and again, if you need to, use a brush, use the tip of the brush, just for a little bit more definition. If you can't get, it's usually I do that when it's really hard to get to areas if the sponge isn't doing what you need it to do. If you feel some areas need a bit more definition, just drop it in there as well. Then it's white for all the glowy bits, like the lenses and the bits on the wrist. And if you do need to, just wipe it with your finger if you get a bit on there by accident. I've thinned this down quite a lot as well, so you might want to do a second coat if you want a bit more punch. Then I'm going to use some frost art and apply that over those lenses and the glowy bits. Again, tidy up if you need to, if it looks a bit messy. And then it's just dry brushing those weapons with ash grey again, just to make them pop out a little bit more. Not necessary, but just, it's quick and easy. Looks great. And there we are, our Imperial Fist is done. Wasn't that much of a chore to paint yellow after all. So we've got the Imperial Fist done. We're now going to just move on to showing you how to base the models so you can just crack on and play some games. And then we'll cover the rest of the first founding in part 3. So we're just going to jump onto some basing. This is just a generic basing, you don't have to follow this. I just really like this basing style and it worked really well across all the colour schemes I've done in this video. So if you don't have access to thinners or like the liquid pigments, just use contrasts, it's fine, it'll work. But yeah, bit of basing, let's get on it. Now, first up, we're going to get some Lunar Desert and we're just going to apply that onto the base. Now, when I apply this, I like to add a little bit of water as well. It just makes it a lot easier to move it around the feet. Otherwise, you just get loads of goop up the ankles and up the shins and stuff like that. If you're Russian like me, you will. And that's Russian, not Russian. So just keep moving around. Start off with that thin coat first, then just applying some more after and just build it up to whatever texture and thickness that you want. Then I'm going to get some greenskin soil here. I really like using this. It's one of those liquid pigments. It is required to use thinners. So I'll just apply some down and then I get some thinners and apply it on there. But the end result, I really like the look of it. It just looks quite natural and dusty. It's up to you if you want to do this. You can just get a wash or a contrast and do the same thing. But the end result is really, really nice. But yeah, I'm just moving it around and get some thinners and just keep applying that to it, just so it's nice and thin. You can add it to the feet as well if you want it to look a bit dusty around the feet. There we are, look how lovely that looks. But I'm going to add a bit of a highlight to it now. And here I'm using medium sea grey, just working my way along, just picking out some of the edges. You don't actually have to do this, but it looks quite nice if you do. Then we're going to move on to painting the rim. Now, usually when you're using liquid pigments like you just saw there, it goes a bit weird. So you just have to put a bit of paint on, wipe it with your finger, and that should get rid of it like I'm just doing here now. So it just requires a little bit of tissue to wipe it or your finger. That's the first coat going on. So all we're doing is just adding a couple of coats. So this is the second coat, and then after that I'll be applying a third coat. If you find there's a little bit of like grit there from the texture paint, just wipe off with your finger and just go back over again. The first half of the first founding is done. We've covered 4 schemes and some basing, which is great. If I was to do one thing differently, I would probably put more base coats on the white scar, so the black, the red, before washing it. It's just an efficiency that sometimes doesn't always come to your mind until like later on down the painting journey. And you guys might find this at home when you're doing your own armies, you might find a speedier method later on down the line. The end result's the same, so don't stress it. If you think, oh, will it be different? It won't. Thank you, as always, to the supporters. You guys are amazing. I've got a bunch of patrons going by here. Without you guys, yeah, thank you. I've got obviously lots to learn still. Lights, camera. I probably zoomed in and zoomed out, fuzzed, went out of focus in this video numerous times, so I do apologise for that. Plenty more videos on offer as well, so I've got more in the pipeline, a nice mix, so Star Wars, historicals, more sharp, Warcry, more sharp, then I've Necromunda, more time, more sharp, so lots of videos that are nice variety, including sharp ones. So yeah, absolutely looking forward to it. So thank you very much for all your help. Really squeeze that peach. Oh, it feels so good. Yeah, right, I'm gonna go make some more. Love you all, have fun. I don't know why I keep looking over there. It's just a box of Kazakin. They're probably next as well. Yeah, bye, love you. As always, I want to say a massive thank you to all the people that have helped and supported. So whether that's the patrons that are going by now, you guys are awesome. Really appreciate your support. And also, you know, my wife, my kid. It sounds like no, that's my wife, my kid. What's my kid done? He's just got in the way. It's all he's done. It's like, Daddy, what's this why do? That's not helpful, Charlie. That's not helpful. Mrs. Peach has been great, super helpful. Worst critic ever. She's like, you know, rips every video to pieces. I should probably just do this at the end as a blooper. That makes more sense. While squeezing a peach, just do that at the end while squeezing a peach.